Hi everybody, my name's Dee Dee Vergados, and today I'm here with Leslie Mitchell-Clark, my wonderful colleague, and we are going to be speaking about phobias. Because phobias in hypnosis are one of the things that hypnosis is most well known for. Often we see hypnotists going on to TV shows and people have a phobia of a snake or a spider where they're so petrified they're almost jumping out of their skin. Hypnotists will take them to the back room and in 20 minutes put a snake on them and they're fine.
Yes.
Leslie, explain this to us. How can someone be so scared and so freaked out and in a matter of 20 minutes or half an hour that phobia is gone?
Okay, well, I think firstly we probably should understand what a phobia is. Now, most of the time a phobia is nothing more than a defense mechanism. And it's a defense mechanism that has usually been in place in the individual's psyche since childhood, most often. Now, certainly phobias can come later in life. There's no real hard and fast rule about it, but in my experience as a practitioner, and probably in your experience too, Dee Dee, most phobias are established in childhood. Now, a good way to think about this is we have to remember that the subconscious mind, which is the biggest part of us, we're like a little, we often use the metaphor of an iceberg, where that little part that sticks up on top, that is our conscious mind that we interact with people and appear to be, functioning. But the huge part of us is our subconscious. The subconscious is literal and it lives in the present time, which is one of the reasons why in hypnotherapy we always speak in the present tense, because we have learned to use the language of the subconscious mind, which is always in present time. So if someone comes to me, for instance, and presents with a fear of, say, cats, not an altogether unusual phobia, what we generally do is we use regression techniques and we take the client back to the origin of that phobia. And what we usually find would be something like the following. Say the client was 3 years old and playing with a new kitten or cat, at home, and pulled the tail of that cat. The cat went, and that frightened the little child, the little 3-year-old child. So the subconscious mind of that small child said, I'm going to make sure that this frightening, life-threatening situation never happens again. And the way I'm going to do that is we will always avoid cats. I will create a fear response. So there will be no interaction with cats, so this danger will never happen again. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of the process that is most common in the onset of phobias. And usually, what's the time period that's involved in getting rid of a phobia completely? Because I've seen anything from 20 minutes to sometimes 3 sessions. That's very accurate, Dee Dee, because it depends entirely on the receptivity of the individual, on their desire to change the behavior, because as you know, people become comfortable even with negative behaviors. It starts to define them and they feel like, well, if I lose this, I'm losing myself. So it depends entirely on the client, but certainly we can, under certain circumstances, particularly if we're using neuro-linguistic programming, we can possibly eliminate a phobia in 1 session. More commonly, I would say it would be between 2 and 3 sessions. And in the milieu of hypnotherapy, we use progressive desensitization, which is a technique that was explored 100+ years ago, and we still use it. We just don't use it in quite the same way as the Freudians and the Adlerians did so many years ago.
Wonderful. And you brought up something really interesting, which I'd like you to explain to our audience, because, for example, if one has what we call secondary gain because of the phobia, for example, a person is allergic to grass, therefore they can never go over to their in-laws' place because you know, currently they live in a condo and their in-laws have all this grass around, they're not going to want to
Exactly.
heal that allergy or that phobia.
Right, right. The allergy and the phobia becomes a tool of all kinds of avoidance.
Right.
And it can do.
Yeah, so explain a little bit about sometimes how that third session is needed to clean up any, as you said, identity or secondary gain because of having had the phobia.
The phobia. Well, I think it's a case of integration. We integrate the modality that we use in dealing with phobias. And certainly, as you said, the secondary gain, we talk about if a person, let me put it this way, if someone is resistant in the treatment, in the tried and true, predictable, uncontested treatment of phobias that we use, if someone is resistant, there have to be secondary issues. And so case by case, if I felt the resistance, if we had gone through the process as we should do, and it's still not effective, then we get in there and we find out why. What contemporary issues are happening? How is the fear being used as a defense mechanism in a completely different way than its origin? And again, we would use parts therapy, no doubt. We would try to go back to this contemporary use of the fear and eliminate it from that standpoint.
Excellent. And if there's anything you'd like to leave our audience with about phobias and hypnosis?
Okay, well, I think just the main thing that I would like to convey to our audience is it is not necessary to relive a fear on a traumatic physical level to get rid of it. It used to be thought that that was the way it had to be done 100 years ago. For instance, if someone had arachnophobia, if they were afraid of spiders, what the early psychiatrists used to actually do is they would get a container full of spiders and the person would put their hand in and for increasing amounts of time until finally they were desensitized to the spiders and had no reaction at all and could just leave their hand in there. Well, we really do the same kind of thing in hypnosis. We do it more quickly and we do it virtually. And we also have a unique technique where we allow the person to return to a completely safe environment. So they are never overwhelmed by the fear as we are removing it. It's a process, and generally speaking, most commonly 3 sessions is typical for the removal of a very embedded phobia. We can do it in 1 session, but I'd say if that happens, it's probably a younger person who has more neuroplasticity. But the reality is that I think you may have found, Dee Dee, most people that come to me with phobias are in midlife.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee Dee.
By far, Leslie is the #1 phobia specialist, so do feel free to visit our site. And you also do Skype appointments?
I do.
I do them for phobias as well?
I can and I do.
Okay, wonderful.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you, everyone out there.
Have a good day.